Vice Admiral, political correctness as a topic seems to permeate every sector in society. The Canadian Armed Forces are not immune. How, in your opinion, has political correctness impacted the Canadian Armed Forces?
And I'm not making excuses. In fact, I find it very frustrating. And as do a number of the leaders who are still there, who I worked with in my career. But equally, this has to happen and has to get sorted out, and not because it's politically correct, because it's the right thing to do. And if you want young Canadians to join and more importantly than just join, stay in the organization, they have to feel that they are being respected in whatever shape or form that respect takes.
Okay, so
respected as people.
Let me change gears then. I mean, and we'll chuck the political correctness word aside for a second. We have persons who enlist or are currently in the forces who have various conditions or various identities that, and they would like accommodation. For example, transgender persons. But then some people argue, well, how much accommodation can happen until, or how do we measure accommodation versus operational capability, and how do they intersect, and how do the two impact each other? So, for example, if someone's transitioning and they're going through multiple surgeries, well, how is that going to impact their capabilities or the operational capability of the armed forces? So I think this is a valid question, and I think people think about this.
Yeah, and I'll try to do it justice. So look at the first thing I think your viewers need to understand is, notwithstanding how some may view the systemic erosion of standards or whatever the premises of their own perspective on the armed forces, the bottom line is there are universal standards for performance, individual personal performance inside the armed forces. And although some people in the armed forces may not be conducting themselves and viewing this the way they should, the system looks at this and says, we really don't care what who you are, how you identify, whatever those issues are, as long as you can perform these functions. And if you can perform those functions, then you meet the standard, and the rest of it really is a distraction. Now, that's how the system views it in an ideal world. But obviously, the system is populated by human beings, and human beings are fundamentally flawed.
Right.
And when you allow human beings to behave in inappropriate ways, they're going to start passing judgment, and they're going to start doing things which are wrong. How do people get accommodated through the example that you described? Well, like anybody else who's going through any type of medical procedure, there's, again, the military has processes. My God, does the military have processes? And so then there's an evaluation of where you are medically. Are there any restrictions on your employment while you're going through these medical processes, et cetera, et cetera? The medical system has a very robust way of dealing with this. And when you're able to go back and perform those mandatory tasks, and the medical system says you're fit, well, then you're fit, and you carry on and you do the job. And as long as you can do the job, that really doesn't matter. And this is why the whole gender issue and everything else are legitimate issues from the perspective of people not being treated with respect and dignity.
Correct.
But they aren't legitimate issues from the perspective of whether they can do the job or not, because they don't matter to whether you can do the job.
Okay,
the specifications for the job are very clear, and if you can do them, you can do the job.
Okay, that was a good explication of that, because a lot of Canadians are curious, and I'm curious about that, so I think that really explained it.